Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and we're here to interview the game changers, the future makers, the co-collaborators and creators who are here to collaborate with one another towards a better future for all of us. Enjoy the show. We've got a great guest coming up for you right now. Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and today I have Sherry Walling on the show. What's going on, Sherry?
I am doing well. I'm actually sitting here with a broken foot, so I'm going to talk to you and not move and be nearly as animated as you are.
That's okay. I can do it for both of us. Not to worry about that. How'd you break your foot? Let's start there.
With a really fabulously interesting story of walking down the stairs.
Okay,
And
got it.
missing a step and falling down.
That's that new thing called sarcasm you're working on? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it is. I'm practicing. What do you think? Like sort of like C++?
You know, I think you do a little bit better on the East Coast than the West Coast, to be perfectly honest. But somebody's got to teach Minneapolis, so I'm glad you're there to show them the way.
Right. I'm a Californian living in Minneapolis, so there's lots of things that I'm experiencing culturally right now.
In fact, I was actually thinking like we should really fix this problem on text messaging because many relationships have been ruined based on that. And now you have the president tweeting from his toilet every morning about to start World War III. We really need a sarcasm font, right? Instead of the JK LOL after the problem, after the nukes have been launched, we need something to tell people, hey, listen, I was just kidding. Sarcasm is my love language. I didn't mean it. And please, let's get off the brink.
You need to know what's coming. You have to have a warning, fair warning, so we know how to read things.
So I think the sarcasm font is something we can work on in the next 45 minutes. What do you think? Let's get it together,
do that.
people, so that everybody has a way to go. All right. So the entrepreneur's guide to getting your together, keeping your together.
Keeping your shit together.
Let's talk about that first, because so many people out there, besides their sarcastic tendencies, also have this problem where stuff just keeps piling up. It's not necessary, it's not important, but it keeps piling up. So how in a world of so much noise and so little signal can people who consider themselves entrepreneurial make a dent and make a movement around what they're doing and keep it from consuming their lives in a way that's not fulfilling? It's just a bunch of busy work.
I mean, I think it really starts with yourself and who you are. Like if you are someone who is thoughtful and able to execute and kind of mindful of your own strengths and weaknesses, I think that those kinds of internal skills bring a lot of power to your work. But if you are somebody who has like a fairly fragile ego or someone who is not adept at keeping organized or keeping your emotions under some level of control or at least awareness, then I think you can have a lot of trouble trying to do good work in the world.
Because it's so funny. Like you see so many people out there, they know what to do. They can even say like, I know I should be doing X, Y, and Z, but they can't emotionally get themselves to take action. Can you tell us a story about when you might've struggled with this as well? Because, you're human just like everybody else. And I know people out there listening for like, hey, this is Superwoman talking. I want to make sure that I have something that I can relate to here. Let's talk about your journey up until this point and how this became your mission in life.
Yeah, I think it became my mission in life because I saw so many people failing at it and really struggling to live meaningful, happy lives in the midst of like doing work that they thought is important. And I think, like you say, I have had my own resistance to this. So for example, my book's coming out in a couple weeks, but it's been on my to-do list for like 5 years, Brad. Like I'm actually like very embarrassed to admit that, but it's been something that I have been thinking about and working on and probably like should have done, like the existential should, like this was my life's work that I was just like dragging my feet about and making excuses about. And so, yeah, I finally got my own together and have to write a book about getting your shit together.
Fair enough. So 5 years, what was the original idea? How did it change over the time that you wrote it or didn't write it?
It's changed pretty drastically, actually. It's taken much more focus on the life and well-being of entrepreneurs. When I first started thinking about writing a book, I had just retired or resigned from being a tenure track faculty person, which I'm not that old. So to have gone through the life of a faculty person and then decided like, oh, I don't like doing this. I don't want to be a college professor despite going to school for a really very long time. That felt like a really big step. So I still wanted to be a thinker. I still wanted to be contributing something to the world. And so I thought, oh, I'll write a book. But I really had no like good idea about what I wanted to write a book about, just that I didn't want my words to die. Like I didn't want to kind of leave that role as a teacher and a thinker and kind of fade away into oblivion.
You kind of feel like Benjamin Button to me a little bit. Like you went on this tenure track, 60-year-old life, and now you're in your 30s, and now it's like, okay, I'm moving backwards. I want to make sure that I get my book out and get my career established, and then eventually I'll, grow young and die. But
I think that's not a bad way to do it. I'm trying to become more and more playful the older I get. I feel like I worked really hard in my 20s and was like a proverbial old woman before I needed to be. And now I'm almost 40. I'm turning 40 this year, and I'm planning to have a lot more fun.
I love it. And you said your 11-year-old actually helped you come up with the title of your book.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he heard that language, but well, actually, I know
okay.
exactly where he heard that language.
If iTunes gets up in arms, then we'll change it. But up until then, you know what? It's a word. It's just a word. Everybody relax. It's going to be, it really is. And I think the message is the most important thing, right? Understanding that we all have these periods of our lives where we need to get our stuff together, if you will, and keep it together, so that we can actually accomplish the thing we set out to accomplish. We can actually have the impact that we want to make. That takes a little bit of practical and tactical, right? It takes a little bit of reining in our emotions. Can we give some people maybe listening just some practical and tactical tips here on how you might go about this?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, and I will answer your question, but I think the word is actually really important to use because it is a little bit edgy and it does depict this level of franticness. So when you drop something on your toe, or you're like, something bad has happened, you've made a mistake, or you're feeling a little bit frantic, it's like,
you fell down the stairs.
I fell down the stairs, and I said a different word of the same vein. But
nobody threw you down the stairs, right? I just want to get really clear.
No, I want to be super clear. There's no aggression in my house. It's all just.
If you're being domestically abused, just blink twice. Okay, got it.
Yeah, this is okay. We digress. So when we come to like the practical strategies for people to keep themselves together, I really think it's a practice of slowing down in little doses. So taking very small amounts of time to check in with yourself, whether that's a really sort of simple journaling practice, highs and lows from the day, whether it's really making sure that you take time to care for your body, whether it's making sure that you are connecting in your key relationships. I feel like a lot of the things I end up talking to people about are really obvious, but also really profound, because a lot of us aren't doing those kinds of things, and a lot of us aren't making sure that we value ourselves enough to say, like, get a good night's sleep. We don't let our brains be important enough to prioritize those kinds of behaviors.
The answer must be to work harder and burn ourselves out more. It just must.
No, it really never is, Brad.
Are you sure? Because I was just going to work 24/7 until I died.
Yeah.
You're telling me there's another way?
That's going to be soon.
Tim Ferriss character. I don't know if that could work. Next you're going to tell me I could have a 4-hour work week and make $50,000 a month.
I don't have that life, so that's not the book that I've written. The book that I've written is about like doing hard things, but enjoying the journey as much as you possibly can along the way.
And I digress, but honestly, it doesn't take a genius to make things more complex or to work harder. It takes a genius to make things more simple and boil them down to their essence, and then actually do that thing and form habits around that thing, because it doesn't have to be hard. We don't have to struggle so hard. We add so much noise and craziness and busyness to our lives, figuring things out instead of just doing the things that we know will work consistently. And I have so many clients that do this to themselves. They'll start making sales and they'll start, crushing and making all this extra money. And they take on all these new projects that they haven't figured out, that they're not capitalized for. They're trying to add extra layers of complexity. Just do the thing.
Yeah.
ABC. And then your bank account fills up with money and your stress level goes down. You can actually make good decisions. But instead of that, they ditch this and they go off on this other thing that's just that they don't know how to do, that could take them 10 years to figure out, and a lot of money and costly mistakes, instead of just focusing on turning the crank on things that work.
I think a lot of us are looking for hacks and shortcuts, and a lot of people are selling hacks and shortcuts. Like, take this one supplement, do this one thing, sleep in this way, and it will revolutionize the way that your brain works. And a lot of that's just not true. Like, if you're going to do hard things and ship and think important, interesting thoughts, like, there are very few shortcuts to doing that, to getting that done.
Especially to do something that's relevant and specific and useful and valuable to your niche, your audience, your marketplace, whatever it is, right? It takes time to develop that. So I'll give a personal example. We have this crypto course that just launched, and we're teaching mastery of trading and investing, around this thing of, okay, you're really excited about cryptocurrency. I get it. You see all your friends making money. 8 out of 10 people who are investing in cryptocurrency right now have zero idea about investing, never invested in anything before, which is dangerous because they haven't mastered bottle rockets. Then they're going to go play with dynamite. It's very risky. So I try to, get them what they need. But a lot of people come into the course of the execution. I'm just going to tell them what to buy, what to trade, what to, do that. And yes, I will share how I'm thinking about things, but that's the important piece is like, I'm going to give you the answer, but I'm going to help you get to the answer yourself. I'm going to teach you how to fish, and ideally teach fishermen so they can teach other fishermen and end world hunger, right? These are not skills that should die inside of me because I spent 10 years mastering them. And the same goes for you or anybody listening, is like, whatever you've mastered in your life, make sure you can find a process and a way to teach that mastery, because we don't need a lot of dabblers. Dabblers have gotten us to where we are today, which is a world full of problems that we feel like can be solved with just instantaneous gratification.
A
Leaving
little
us
hack here
wholly
and there.
unfulfilled and leaving us completely unsuccessful in the long term.
And pretty disconnected. I love what you're talking about, because when we get to a point in our own learning and our own experience where we can make a meaningful contribution to someone else, I mean, not only is that like good for the world and everything, but it's actually really good for our own mental health. It's really important that we can find ways to make meaningful contributions to other people in ways that they really need. And there are lots of ways that people need help, whether it's learning about cryptocurrency or it's understanding how depression looks in a high functioning entrepreneur. When we get to a place where we can like pay it forward, but also teach something meaningful, it feels really good to us on a kind of neurological level. And it also helps us have the kind of meaningful relationships with other people that are sustaining during the hard times.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, Sherry. So what have been some people's obstacles to getting their shit together, so to speak? Like, what are the common things that show up in people over and over and over again? Not just entrepreneurs, but people in general. I love to look at entrepreneurs as this archetype or this separate class of people, but in reality, everybody can be an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur just
Absolutely.
takes resources from areas of low yield and puts them in areas of high yield. That's all they do. They just say,
Yep.
hey, I see it this way. Let's rearrange it and put it this way.
Yeah, I think one of the number one challenges that humans face, and maybe entrepreneurs in particular, as that maker archetype, is seeing themselves as special snowflakes. I hear a lot of like the same excuses of, well, I don't have time, and my particular inbox is so very important and heavy, and my particular relationship is more complicated. And I go back and forth between balancing like the specificity of someone's individual experience. I never want to downplay that. I'm a clinical psychologist. Like, my job is to listen to people's unique experiences. But I do think that we use our own specialness as an excuse to not do the hard work. At the end of the day, we can all come up with lots of excuses, and all of us can. It's a universal problem. We all feel lonely. We all feel scared. We all feel self-doubt sometimes. And our ability to understand that as a universal experience, to talk about it, and to come to practical solutions is, that's what makes the difference between someone who ships, who gets something done, who makes something, and someone who is, on the couch talking about what they could do if certain things were different.
Have you noticed too, as you go through your life, and I'm a little bit younger than you, but not by much. I've noticed that I've stopped paying attention to people who just talk.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of give them a few cycles and I hear them talking, and then I pay attention to what actually happens, and then I hear them talking and pay attention to what actually happens. I just stopped giving those people my time and attention and energy, because they're literally wasting themselves. And there's nothing I don't want to get in an argument with them about how they suck, but they suck, and I don't want them around my stuff anymore because it drags me down. And that
And
might
honestly,
be a terrible thing to say, but I only have so many cycles. I don't have enough time.
and it's an insult to my own experience, like, I did the work to get a PhD. I did the work. I read all of those stinking books, and wrote all of those articles, and wrote all of those papers. And
Benjamin buttoned your way into a piece of paper.
and I have 3 children. Like, I know what it's like to be in the grind. I know what it's like to come from very little resources and make something and make a career and a life that I'm proud of. And so I think when you sit with folks who are like, here are all of my reasons why, it feels really insulting to what I've had to overcome or work myself to get done in my life. And so that's just kind of on a personal level why it's really hard for me to tolerate a lot of like talkers.
What, for you, Sherry, if you had a microphone that magically could reach the ears of everybody in the world, what would you wish everybody knew?
It's going to be okay.
Hmm. I like that. It feels good. And it is. Your way, all the stuff. Like I love to ask myself the question. Maybe you have a good clinical psychology hack for this as well that you'd love to share. But whenever something comes up that triggers me, or I feel like, I'm getting better and better at this, but it still happens. I always ask myself the question: is this going to matter in 5 years? Is this going to matter in 1 year? Right? If the answer is no, I move it closer. Is this going to matter in a month? No. Is this going to matter tomorrow? No. Why does it matter right now? Stuff is just going to keep happening. And the way we react versus responds is the entirety of our human experience.
I like to play the worst case scenario game a lot. Like worst case scenario, I don't know, someone sues me for my clinical practice or, something. I lose everything I've built. I lose my license. I lose my money. I lose my savings. Like, I actually still believe in my own ability to be happy and have a good life, even under some pretty dire circumstances. When I was a junior in college, I studied abroad in West Africa in Ghana. And I came to know this little community of expats, like people mostly from Europe who had come to live in this little beach community called Kokrobite, which is, on the Ghanaian coast. And they opened this little Italian restaurant, and they grew their own vegetables and sort of hung out by the ocean all day. And they had nothing. I mean, they just had whatever they could make selling pasta to students who were traveling and studying abroad. But, I saw in them a good life. And it's a little bit of an edge case, but I believe that about myself too. If I had to go work at Starbucks, I think I could actually have fun and enjoy the ability to talk to people and meet interesting people. And that knowledge within my own self makes it so that everything else is icing. Everything else is a game. Everything else is hey, today I have this and I'm going to enjoy it. Or I have this opportunity, I'm going to make the most of it. But if none of it works out, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, I look at it this way. You'll have a better story. If everything went toes up, it's meant to happen. That's how I look at it. And you'd have a great story as a result. And you could build it all back faster because you know all the steps, right? It wouldn't be that hard. It would actually be a lot easier because now you have the ability to connect with people that you didn't have before.
Absolutely.
As we're doing right now, right? I have my my end of the world contingency plan, get on a plane and go to New Zealand or whatever. And, I feel like it actually would be so awesome to start over sometimes. I encourage that some days. I don't want to. I love my life, but if everything went toes up, worst case scenario, and it all came crumbling down, I could build it back so fast compared to what I took to build to this point. It'd actually be a lot faster because I would be so clear without all extra stuff and noise and obligation and responsibility. If I could just walk away from it all, if that's even a thing, I don't even think that's a thing. I think these are worst case scenarios we come up with. I don't even think it's possible to start over from scratch. But if you did, you could build it back so much faster. I know you could.
Yeah. And that knowledge brings some assurance.
Yeah,
there's less to be anxious about.
Yeah, that's the wealth, right? It's not the money or whatever else you want to use to measure your wealth. I've had money, I've had no money, I've had lots of money. It doesn't matter. I know how to make it. I know how to add value to people. I know how to scale that.
Yep.
Simple. That's what we're trying to learn. That's why we're preaching mastery, folks listening at home. That's it, really. Because always, otherwise you're going to be chasing what's the next thing, what's the next hit, what's the next this, what's the next that.
And often the magical mastery is in the simplest things, like being able to really listen to people. If you can really listen and pay attention to people, you can build any kind of business. If you can understand what people are saying and what they're not saying and what they need and what their intuitions are. So those simple skills are going to, see you through whether you're a CEO or you're a crypto investing genius or you're making a fabulous caramel macchiato.
Fabulous caramel macchiato. That sounds actually pretty nice right now. So Sherry, what have been the biggest resources for you as far as, you've had your professional career, which is storied, you're a doctor, PhD, et cetera. You have all these great accolades and things, but what have been the most, the things that have caused you to grow the most throughout your life? Have you done personal development work? Are there books? Are there seminars? Are there masterminds? What are the things that are kind of not so known, I would say, like if somebody were just to Google you, that have contributed?
Yeah. I think that most of my deep learning and development as a person has happened in the back country on a bus somewhere in some different place. So because early on in my life, when I was 18, 19, I went to Ghana. I've tried to go to somewhere very different, and that's a very broad definition, but somewhere very different at least once every 2 years, usually by myself. And those experiences, whether it's the highlands of Guatemala or trying to navigate Rome on my own, like those kinds of things have really shaped who I am and how I see the world. It's also really taught me to watch people. It's fed my curiosity for people, which of course, as a psychologist, those are my greatest strengths. It's also taught me about how to be patient, how to calm myself down when I'm lost, how to like tolerate sitting by a chicken on a bus. So, this isn't maybe the normal answer to this question. There's not been one book, there's not been necessarily one thing, but just that like determination to get out there in the world and let the world in all of its like diverse wildness sort of shape who I am and what I love.
Yeah. And what about the chicken that had to sit next to you? I mean, honestly, did you ever ask
I know, I feel so bad for that chicken. Chickens, goats, small cows.
I can relate to the Rome thing too, because, it's like New York City, except way older, and they don't speak English. They speak Italian. It's just that busy though. It's just that crazy. I'm actually reading a series of books right now called the First Man in Rome series by Colleen McCullough, which are they're each like 1,000 pages long and just epic. And it really gives you a new, appreciation for the ways in which we live today, where scores of people would die all the time in every scene, back then for every number of reasons, from, war to famine to pestilence to this, to that, to the other, to I didn't like that guy, so I killed him, that kind of stuff just kind of went on. And now like seeing our life as a result of all those iterations and generations and learnings and, things like laws and rules and taxes, you start to appreciate a little bit more, because there were worse things in the past that humans went through to get here.
And the hard things that we have to face have happened before.
Yeah. Just because you add a new technological spin on it doesn't mean it's not the same human problem over and over again, because we create these issues. We don't change as fast as our
world. It's greed, it's selfishness, it's
ego.
Whatever, but
yeah, it's fear, it's this and that and the other thing. And the world is getting smaller, and we are able to now tap into the learnings of each other so much more quickly. And I think that's creating, despite what we see on the news, which is the fear mongering, it is creating a better world in the sense that we're more connected, in the sense that we can now see the opinions of others from their perspective more often. And that will ultimately wash over you. It's the same effect as you traveling to those places. And I encourage that. I've been to 23 countries and 43 states now. I've spent time with other people and other cultures. And I want to continue to do that, because it always brings me back to, why did I choose the life that I have? Why is it important to me? What are my values? And what are the contrasts that allow me to see, okay, here are the things I chose versus what they were chosen into,
And it cultivates empathy.
Yeah.
Which again is a great sort of life skill, but also a helpful business skill. You can understand how people feel and what they need and what they're longing for when you can get inside of their minds a little bit. That helps you do good work.
I think empathy is the number one trait that I see in all really successful salespeople, influencers, marketers. They can really get inside that conversation as if they were having it with that person at that time. And that's just a skill, like anybody can develop it.
But it's a hard one to develop from a book. Like you have to actually get on the bus with chicken and lady and like figure out that commonality, figure out how to read and see and hear.
So Sherry, if somebody were really interested in getting started, this inspired them to take action in a particular way, what would you say is the first step towards building that empathy, towards building that muscle of experience and gratitude and all the things we kind of glossed over today? Like what would be your call to action for people listening today?
I think to find a way to help another human in a way that makes you maybe slightly uncomfortable. And, that can be finding an after-school program where kids need some help being read to, or some tutoring, or serving in a soup kitchen. Or these don't have to be things that necessarily take hours and hours of your life, but a couple hours spent here and there can be pretty transformative, especially when it's something that's done in contact with someone who you don't usually have contact with. I remember being in high school and had to do community service hours for school for a project, I think. And I packed food boxes with people who were on like release from jail. So it was like me, like 15-year-old me, and these people who'd been in jail for 20, 30 years or in prison 20, 30 years. And I had some really interesting conversations, and it really shaped like who I'm willing to talk to and who I see the humanity of.
Mm.
So there's no there's no substitute for just good old fashioned exposure, getting yourself out of your comfort zone and letting yourself bump up against other kinds of people.
I love it. So get out there, get some exposure, be in service to others that are very different than yourself. And just, it goes to show, like when you start doing that type of work, you see how quickly people can fall into disrepair. You see how quickly their lives can be altered, not irrevocably. They can always come back, certainly, but it doesn't take too much. A couple of things pile on, a death or an illness or a this or that, you're a few months behind, and all of a sudden you're on the street, and that just adds to your problems. The
Yep.
compounding effect is incredible. People think, oh, these people are just lazy or this, that. It has nothing to do with that. Hard luck hits everybody sometimes.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know? So being in service can ground you to the things that you have, and it can help a person in need. And I think that's a really important thing. Like we build houses in Mexico, we work in refugee camps, and this is not a plug for any of that, but it just reminds you that, hey, you've got it pretty damn good.
Again, I'm a psychologist and I help entrepreneurs not be so stressed out. And there's very little thing like when we think about activities that have the most benefit for your mental health, we're talking about things like altruism, helping other people, cultivating gratitude, which is involved in an activity like this, cultivating empathy, gratitude, empathy, altruism. Those are the kinds of things that help us realize that our problems aren't quite so big. And that's what most of us need in order to calm ourselves down, is to just put ourselves in context, put our worries in context. Yes, it's important. Yes, you're working super hard to grow a business and make a life that is valuable to you and meaningful to you. And yes, your worries are real. The kinds of burdens that you're carrying are real, but they fit in this larger history, this larger context of your membership in sort of all of humanity. It gets a little existential, but I think it is helpful to people.
That's beautiful. Sherry, so you talk about anxiety and depression coming up in entrepreneurs a lot. And I know in my own life, I've seen those kind of cycles, and I've gotten okay at managing them. I put up a post recently about how I titled it "How I Cured My Depression," because I came to the conclusion after, and I have a very campfire controversy way of looking at this, is like, it was a choice to be that way. And the choices I made that changed it, ultimately, if I keep making those choices, I keep feeling good. And if I lapse on any of those choices, I stop feeling good and I slump right back into it. And so I know what it looks like. I know what the triggers are. I know how to get, at least myself, I don't know if that would fit for everybody, back into a good state. What are some of the things that you help entrepreneurs to do when they fall into these bouts of anxiety and depression? Because I still struggle with the anxiety part a lot.
Yeah.
The depression part, I feel like I've licked, at least for right now. I would love to just hear your take on that.
I mean, I think the sort of superpower number one is noticing how you're feeling, being self-reflective enough to catch those early signs early, rather than getting to the point where you can't get yourself out of bed, or you're so anxious that you're beginning to make really bad decisions, or decisions that are irrational or counterproductive. So not much can be done if you don't have your own ability to notice, wow, I am sliding down the slope. I am not feeling great. Here's how I know. Here's what tells me that. And for most of us, like early signals look like not sleeping well, like waking up every morning in the morning at 3 a.m. and the mind is going and going and going. And if that's not a normal thing for you, but it starts to happen, that can be kind of an early warning sign. Loss of interest in things that we normally enjoy, being really irritable or irritated with people who we normally like our family members, our significant other. So once we begin to catch those early signs, we can implement those, sounds like some of the strategies that you've come to, where you take better care of your body, you reach out, you get connected, you talk to your therapist, you talk to your mastermind group, you talk to your people, you help sort through, why am I feeling how I'm feeling? None of that's possible though if we're not paying attention.
Yeah, I think that early warning system having other people accountable to that too. Like if you live with people, for example, I tried living on my own. I couldn't do it. So now I live with roommates. And I don't want like endless roommates, like a three and a 5-bedroom house works great. Right. And we, I kind of ask them from time to time, like, hey, if you notice me showing up in a certain way, I'd really love for you to just to check in with me and let me know that. Cause I'm not always aware, like when I'm stressed, I'm not always aware when I'm anxious. I'm not always aware when I'm not showing up or being present in the way that I want to be. And it's not to make me feel bad or shame me or guilt me. It's like, no, it's just a reminder like, hey, this is how my experience of you is right now. And it's really helpful just to have that feedback.
I think when you get in that depression or anxiety spiral, it's like your own self-reflective capacity can become impaired. It's like you're looking in the mirror, but the mirror looks all foggy. You just don't see it very clearly. So you're right. The value of having someone else who knows you well, who can be like, hey, like you got a little something on your tooth. Like here's me giving some feedback. I'm mirroring you and I can help you see things that you don't see. So if you have someone in your life that can do that well, that's fantastic. But it's also, the value of having a mental health professional in your life or a mastermind or, some people who maybe you don't live with, but who know you well and who are qualified to sort of do some of that reflecting back and help you problem solve once you start going in a bad direction.
Yeah. And I think it's important not to make anybody wrong.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. Being depressed and being anxious is part of human existence. And you're going to feel that way sometimes, no matter how good you are at managing it, especially if you're busy, especially if you run multiple projects or companies.
And you're taking big risks.
Right.
I mean, that's the corollary too, is the more of yourself that you're putting out in the world, the more kind of vulnerable you are. And I think the more susceptible you are to depression and anxiety. So that's why I think it's such an important thing to talk about for entrepreneurs.
Especially when you put everything into a project and it doesn't work out, like monitor yourself, like, are you handling that okay? It's okay not to, and get the help that you need. Like at the end of the day, guys, if you need help, ask for help. Right? If you're thinking of harming yourself, if you're thinking of, changing your life drastically or making decisions that are not great decisions, or you're just not in a good place to make decisions right now, ask for that help, ask for that space. I've had to ask people like, hey, I can't deal with this issue right now. I'm going to give myself a week and then I'm going to deal with the issue when I'm in a better headspace. I just know I'm going to make a horrible decision right now.
Yeah.
And all signs are pointing to this is going to be gnarly. Let me create some space. And I've asked people that on my team. I'm like, listen, I this is important. I want to address it, but I can't address it right now. Can we hang until next week? And they're usually like, yeah, it's no problem.
And I think relatedly, one of the things that we don't give ourselves a lot of space for is grief, because we do work on things that don't work out, or we do try relationships or collaborations that don't work out. And I think, kind of expect ourselves as professionals to just roll right through to the next thing. But without giving ourselves a little bit of space to grief, like little g, I think we risk the possibility of those kinds of sadnesses accumulating into depression, big D. So we have to own our emotional stuff along the way and give ourselves space to be human when the things that we really doubled down and tried to do maybe don't work out the way we wanted them to.
I think that's a great message. People just need to hear it every once in a while. Like, hey, it's okay. You're good. Reach out, whatever you need. Sherry, thank you so much for being here. I want to say how grateful we are for having you on the show and sharing your time and your expertise with us, which I know is vast. And I'm so excited for your new book. Can't wait to check it out. If there was a way that we could give back, whether it's connecting you with a resource, an opportunity, a person, a system, plant those crops, if you will, the seeds and crops. What would be a way that we can help you?
I do what I do because I think it's really important. So I think when I have the opportunity to talk with people about mental health and entrepreneurship, to talk about healthy relationships and entrepreneurship, that's what I love to do. So if you need a podcast guest, if you're giving a conference and you need a speaker and you want to have a different kind of voice than is normally at a business conference, then I would love to be part of that. That's the way that you can help me, by equipping me to help the other people in the entrepreneurial community.
Wonderful. So if you have a podcast and you want Sherry, if you have an event, you need a great speaker, she is available. Please reach out to her. What's the best way to do that?
I live on the internet at Zen Founder, Zen Founder. I have a podcast where we talk about mental health and entrepreneurship. That is also the place where people can learn more about the book that's coming out soon and all other things that I'm working on in my consulting practice and events and all that stuff. I can also be found at sherrywalling.com. Sherry like the wine, SHERRY.
That's SHERRYWALLING.com.
Absolutely.
Right on, Sherry. Thank you so much for being here. Any parting words of wisdom for the Make More Marbles community?
It's going to be okay. Just go out and make your great shit.
I love it. And the name of the book is The Entrepreneur's Guide to Keeping Their Shit Together.
How to run your business without letting it run you.
I love it. Where can we find that? On Amazon, I would imagine?
That will be live on Amazon February 21st.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sherry, for being on the show. Thank you. On behalf of everybody in the Make More Marbles community, you're rock. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks so much for listening to the Make More Marbles podcast. For more tips, hacks, and strategies to create an amazing, abundant life in your health, wealth, and relationships, whatever that means to you, head on over to makemoremarbles.com. Check out our cool explainer video about what we're about and join our community of entrepreneurial game changers. We want to help you level up your life in every possible way. And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and please do leave a review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next podcast.